those later. So it's been an intense few weeks, really a few months, but even just the last 2 weeks. So I'm wondering, how are each of you holding up right now?
I'll go. Holding up, I think it depends on the day. Some days are good days, some days are bad days. You know, living in a very uncertain time can be very stressful, and it's a new experience to have to adapt to.
Yeah, I feel the same way. Jesse, you're muted.
There we go. I think all of us feel similar, not just in the restaurant business. And if there's one thing I think we're learning, it's to pivot quickly and to try to figure out how to even stay alive and float. There's been a great deal of care for our staff, all of us. And I think there have been some, we'll talk about it later, but some really innovative new thinking about what the restaurant business is about. So there might be a little bit of good in the middle of this.
Yeah, I agree with Anna and Jesse. You know, the challenge really is right now, you know, basically we're thankful to be alive and our businesses to still be open. You know, the challenge that we all have in food service or hospitality is most people don't recognize, not intentionally, but they just don't realize how important a sector it is to the state, to the country, you know, really to our lives. So, you know, it's our livelihoods, number one, but, you know, in California, and this is all, you know, kind of CRA data, but there are 75,000 plus restaurants, you know, that represent probably the most significant contributor to sales tax revenues, the largest single employer of people in California. Basically, you know, as the three of us know, you know, that business closed on, you know, March 16th. And, you know, hundreds and thousands and millions of people were out of work. Literally, you know, we were out of business overnight and had to adapt and evolve and figure out what's next. And that's the huge challenge, because we have no real guidance in terms of, you know, what is happening. You know, we're basically watching the news, listening to information from the county, from the state, from the federal government, but, you know, we're operating on, you know, like Ann said, a day-to-day, you know, mentality, and that's not what we do. We like to plan for almost, you know, anything except for a pandemic. That was missing from our playbook.
Yeah, I actually went back and I read all of my restaurant stories for the last few months until the first week of March. And it was so surreal just looking at how quickly things change, and just the, like, even the first day of outdoor dining and how big of a deal that was. And now we're at like these new phases where you just kind of adapt to what's going on, what's thrown at you. And it's so surreal. And I can only imagine how each of you feel. What's been the most surreal moment for each of you in the last 5 months?
Has it only been 5 months?
It's been 5 months. I think for me, it was, I got a call in the morning that the Cool Cafe at the Cantor Arts Center was, I should cut my staff by 2. That was at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. And then at 8:30, I got a call as I was drinking my martini, and they said, "You're closing down." And I've been there 20 years. And I had to go to the staff the next day and tell them we were closing. And I walked into Flea Street, and everything just felt surreal. And a customer said to me, "There's a lot going on. What do you think? Like, if you have to close, where are you going to get food?" And I said, "That is not the big problem. Getting food is not the big problem." And I think it was, I mean, Elena, you know, tomorrow is Flea Street's 40th birthday. So here we are, having been through ups and downs, and I'm dealing with one that I don't know how, I didn't know how to do it. So it's, I guess surreal was how to save our lives when I thought we were safe.
There's just no playbook, and there hasn't been.
No.
Yeah. Anne, what about you?
We were only open 2.5 weeks when shelter in place was put in place. So, you know, I think Jesse and Michael can understand what it takes to open a restaurant, and to get a restaurant open, you're already running on fumes and you're just trying to get through the first 6 months, and 2.5 weeks in, we're told we have to close. And, you know, I had people who left really great jobs to help me open NOM. And so I wasn't going to abandon them. And so we never closed. We switched to takeout immediately. We closed on a Saturday. We are naturally closed on Sunday and Monday anyway. And we reopened on Tuesday doing takeout. And, you know, we opened without doing any takeout at all. So, you know, we had 2 days to kind of put all the systems in place to do takeout and get on all the right apps to do that. And that was very, very surreal for me.
Michael, what about you?
Everything that they just said is the same. I mean, we were recognizing even in the end of February where, you know, customer guest attitudes were changing. We were watching, you know, we do this in the restaurants on a daily basis anyway. I mean, we survive on cash flow, especially now. But at that time, I mean, we were noticing, you know, all of a sudden, hey, you know, this week is, you know, 30% slower than last week. This week is 40%, you know, and then on whatever it was, March 13th, 14th, whatever day, we had to kind of downshift with staff and, you know, go from, you know, 40 plus people to, I don't know, 15. And then 2 days later, basically we're out of business. You know, we have to lay off all of our staff and switch from, just like Ann, from, you know, Sunday, Monday off, think about what the heck's going on. And I'll try to use very little profanity, unless you have a beeper button. And then, you know, recognizing on Tuesday, we've got to come up with a, you know, new game plan. And, you know, we did that, but we did it with what, we had 40 and then we went to 4 employees.
And
that was the toughest part, the phase of getting through what we thought would be a 3-week shelter in place, to recognizing, you know, really in the course of 3 weeks that, you know, our business models were obsolete, you know, and how do we adapt to that?
Yeah, I wonder if, you know, 5, almost 6 months in, it almost feels more urgent now, because at the very beginning we all thought it was going to be short term, and there was all this momentum too about, you know, ordering takeout and supporting restaurants, and I still see a lot of that, but it feels like, and that's part of why I really wanted to have this conversation now, that the pressures are almost greater, it feels like now.
We did the same thing as Ann. We didn't close, we just opened immediately, but I didn't even own to-go containers because I didn't want my food put in paper. And so to switch this model, we kept our concept of Flea Street, because Flea Street's been around for such a long time that we had to figure out how to put that in a bag and get people to enjoy it at home. And I think because of that, going from surreal and something I never wanted to do, we never wanted to do, into something that actually was familiar for people who were also as confused as we were, ended up helping us survive.
Mm-hmm. And I wanted to ask you about your decision to close NOM. And so, you know, so many restaurants are just trying to stay open at any cost, it seems like. And then there are these other group of people who are sort of hibernating temporarily. So can you tell us about that decision, or what process led up to it?
Sure. Well, we're in hibernation, so we're temporarily closed. You know, when we started this, when all of this started, I thought, you know, this will last a month. And then when a month went by, we knew it was more serious. I thought, well, I just want to get to this summer, because by summer we'll, you know, everybody, you know, everything we were reading was saying less transmission, people are outside more, this thing will get under control. And then summer came, and actually in San Mateo County, we were actually open for indoor dining for a few weeks. But, you know, people weren't comfortable dining indoors, and understandably so. And as we continued with outdoor dining, you know, as I mentioned earlier, my restaurant is in between 2 construction sites, 2 very large construction sites. We weren't intending on ever having outdoor dining. And once outdoor dining became available, we saw a drop in our takeout business. You know, when everyone's closed and everyone's doing takeout, I think the level field is even. But once you have outdoor dining, restaurants that have beautiful patios, that are known for having outdoor dining, I think those tend to be the preferred places to go, because if you're in an enclosed dining area outside, you're not worried about someone walking past you without a mask while you're eating with your mask off. And so we saw a drop in our takeout, and I, after some time, decided that, you know what, we are in a better position to reopen if we can stem our losses and stay closed until we can reopen and do the kind of business that we need to do. I mean, you know, our pro forma had us selling alcohol, and a good amount of it. And so, you know, with takeout, we weren't able to get those numbers. And I mean, everyone who is doing takeout is not doing obviously anywhere near in revenue what they were doing before. And so it just didn't make sense.
Are you thinking that you'll have to wait for indoor dining to resume again, or what will make you feel like you can reopen?
I think once we can do indoor dining again is when I would feel comfortable reopening, because I think that would put us in a position where we would be able to generate the revenue, the kind of revenue that we need to make the numbers that we need to be a functional operating business. But it also, you know, indoor dining, but it, you know, what we're looking for is indoor dining where people are comfortable and not doing, you know, 6 feet distance from each seat, because with that you lose so much capacity that it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Have you mapped out what your capacity would be if you had to be 6 feet apart?
Yes, our capacity goes down to like about 20 guests with everybody 6 feet apart. So it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah. You brought up outdoor dining, and I feel like Jesse and Michael are both two different examples of approaching outdoor dining. Michael, you seem like you've really embraced outdoor dining, and Jesse, you've been much more conservative. So Michael, maybe you could talk about why you embraced that and sort of how it's been going.
Yes, we semi-embraced it, I'd say. I mean, it's been a lifesaver for our business. You know, I think, and I know that probably everybody else feels the same way. I mean, you know, obviously we're thinking about our own survival, but also of our employees. You know, they're like family. So we wanted to get people back to work, but obviously we wanted to do it in a safe manner. And I would say of the folks that are out there doing outdoor dining, we would probably be on the more conservative end of the spectrum in terms of distancing and, you know, really adhering to the regulations. And it's, you know, it's interesting because we have, you know, we call them contrast customers. That's what I'll say. It's just the people that show up without a mask, that want to argue about it, and, you know, basically are angry at us for enforcing something that I'm pretty sure everyone in the world is aware of. But it's amazing to see the number of people that come out that are just really not, you know, following the rules. And that part is very frustrating because we want to keep, you know, our staff safe. We want to keep ourselves safe in order to actually have a sustainable business. When you see people not acknowledging that, it makes it challenging. So, I mean, we're really thankful to the city for stepping up. In our case, you know, closing California Avenue now until the end of the year, which is, you know, it's keeping us afloat, really. You know, we're treading water. You know, we're losing less than we were with takeout. You know, so for our business, we've been, you know, kind of buying time in our minds to keep, you know, the boat floating and to keep, you know, our people working for us. But at some point in time, you know, especially with the weather changing, I think that people have outdoor dining. We've all seen this already. You know, when it's cool outside or when there are fires and smoke, people don't want to be outside, and they probably shouldn't be outside. Then how do we deal with that going from, you know, serving say 50 or 100 customers one day and then 0 the next? And that's a huge challenge. You know, we're really trying to collaborate with the city on coming up with a short/long-term plan where we can have more structure out of doors. You know, we need, you know, design, we need shelter to keep people comfortable and warm when they come to dine. You know, so We're working with an architect on a design for kind of a semi-permanent parklet. We're working with some friends at Al Fresco Heating for some great outdoor heating to keep us going, because we all know that in Palo Alto, when it's below 70 degrees, it's cold and people don't want to be outside. So we're trying to figure that out. But outdoor for us, for our business, I mean, we were surviving with 4 employees on takeout, but that's it. We were surviving, but we were still losing money. None of our fixed costs changed. So, as Ann and Jesse would tell you, we have huge rents, and our costs are, I don't want to say sky high, but they're incredibly expensive. And to keep that going with no cash flow is not realistic. And I do want to throw this out there, which might be insulting to some people, but I want to encourage anybody that orders takeout to call Jesse directly, or call Ann directly, or call me directly and order through us, because most platforms, third party, are charging 20 to 30% for delivery service, and that's as everybody knows in the restaurant business, losing money.
Yeah, I think Anne, you were on, or Nam was on the third-party delivery apps, right?
Yes, we were using DoorDash, but our POS allowed for guests to order online, prepay, and do curbside pickup without having to come in or anything like that. So unless people were ordering it for delivery, it made a big difference.
Yeah. Jesse, I wanted to get back to your decision around outdoor dining. You reopened briefly in June with pretty strict precautions, and then you pretty quickly decided, you didn't feel comfortable, mostly for your staff's safety. Can you talk about that decision?
I think Michael covered some of it, but and I don't want people to be offended by this, but from the beginning, our core values have always been the customer comes last. And it's kind of like the oxygen mask that you put on, that when it gets right down to it, if we don't take care of our staff, then we just are not going to survive, or the environment, or the farmers, or really everything that it takes to get that food beautifully served to a guest. So sitting outside when we opened, I felt entitlement. I felt like people thought they could do whatever they wanted. Their masks were off, and it scared me for my staff, quite honestly. Not that everyone was like that, but some of what Michael talked about, that some people are very respectful and some people are not thinking about the fact that we're still doing everything we can to keep them and us safe. So for that reason, we decided to actually just boost our to-go more. And we've been working more on more items to offer, like we're going to start a cocktail party box, that we'll deliver to your home. And we also decided that we would not use any of the platforms, that we do something called Pop the Trunk, and people drive up, they pop their trunk, and we just put their food in the car, because it was also so expensive it was expensive, but it was also felt like it was putting into an unknown place. Like we didn't know that person, if they were pulling their mask down or what was going on. So we felt like we didn't want to do it. And I'm feeling glad, because I feel the struggle of everyone else who's opened outdoors, and to be using to-go containers in small kitchens with china, and to have this all interacting may seem like we're seamless and the guests may be comfortable, but it's really hard on our staff. And add to that, they've got masks on for 8 hours a day. And in the heat and the smoke, it just, back to the customer, it comes last, but it just didn't feel like it was respectful to the people working with us. So we chose to not open, and we lost a lot of revenues. People were calling for reservations. It was killing me that everybody else was open. It was like, did we make the wrong decision? But I think on our core values, it was the right thing for us to do. And we're hoping people keep coming to us for to-go.
Yeah, can Flea Street survive long-term on just takeout?
If we keep building the platforms, and we just hired a pastry chef to help us build something called Sweet and Savory, and we're going to do the cocktail boxes, which will have all kinds of homemade goodies and Aloy's cocktails that we'll deliver to people within 5 to 10 miles. And we're trying to do that. Getting back into the service element too, is very costly. So as you grow in any business, all your expenses grow. So the way we are right now, we can survive. And for me right now, if we can pay our people, pay our minimum rent, pay for ingredients, if we can just stay alive until we get the, you know, the tests and the vaccine, then I'll be grateful.
Mhm.
So we're choosing that we feel like it's safest for us and for our guests.
Yeah.
I'm scared outside.
I know.
Scared outside.
You mentioned this, there's been such a rapid transformation of business models. I mean, restaurants like Flea Street offering takeout for the first time in your history, restaurants becoming grocery stores selling toilet paper, doing the to-go cocktails, meal kits. In what ways did each of you adapt your business models in ways that you hadn't anticipated, and what worked and what didn't work?
Well, I'm going to start because can I talk about HOH? Hard
Yeah,
House?
we can go there now.
So we decided, because many people who enjoy our meals don't realize how hard it is, how low the pay is for people who work with us, even if we pay them well. And our profit margins are just, you know, if we can make 2 to 5 cents on a dollar, we're doing really well. And then there was a great disparity between what the front of the house made and the back of the house. So we leveled it very quickly and developed something that is called heart of the house. We got rid of the acronyms back of the house from front of the house. Every single hourly person's paid $15 an hour. Every bit of the service charge that we do charge 20% service charge, even on to go, because all of that money goes to help pay our staff. And with that, there was this collaboration that happened. We were able to cut costs. We were able to produce better. There was more joy and love amongst the people. There was no disparity. And I think it's actually helped the business, if that makes any sense. And the dishwashers now make the same as a bartender. And if somebody has greater skills, then we pay them more. But when any guest gives 20%, I wish we could do the tipping model and make it voluntary, but that's illegal in the state of California, or we can't divide it the way we want. Every bit of that now goes from the dishwasher to the bartender. And we're hoping that the public realizes in the past that didn't happen. It only went to the servers, the bussers, and the bartender, the front of the house. So this is a better way for us to keep our staff alive and for them to make a living wage. And because of that, I feel like we've added that to our longevity.
So when you describe that on the face of it, like that makes sense to me. But why is that still kind of I mean, I don't know if you consider that a radical change, but it's not happening in restaurants everywhere yet.
It's starting to happen more. I think Michael would say it is, because a lot of us, one of the good things that came out of this was that all of us as restaurant owners really started talking with each other and sharing how difficult and how dysfunctional and how broken our businesses were. Our payrolls were up to 44%. You can't stay alive on payrolls that high. So what this model did, though, it is different, and we do feel compassion, sadness for the front of the house who are making so much more than everybody else and working less hours. But we had to stop it somewhere so that we could bring back a greater equality, which is both, which involves a lot of different issues of social justice, so that with everybody making the same amount, again, I pay some people more because they have more talents, but with all this coming in from the gratuities or the tips or the service charge, for all of that to go to everyone, that means every single person in my restaurant now makes anywhere from $24 to almost $30 an hour. Dishwashers, bartenders, prior to this, the front of the house were making what, $50, $60, $70 an hour, you guys? A lot. And I think it is a great change, and people are looking at this all over the country to try to fix our broken business. Our broken business was not fair. And let's hope that we create an atmosphere when we serve people and nurture them through our food, that also the staff are nurtured and taken care of in a much more equal and fair way.
Michael and Anne, I'm curious what your reaction is to that kind of a tipping model, and if that's something you'd consider doing at your restaurants.
Well, I opened with a pooled tip system. So like Jesse, didn't matter which position you worked in. It was all prorated based on the hour. So, you know, if you went home sick or you just worked less hours in a particular shift, everything was based on your percentage of that shift that you worked. And it was divided equally. And, you know, the wonderful thing was we had a number of guests who were particularly generous and wanted to, you know, do something special for the staff and gave unusually large tips. And that made such a big difference in a night for our team. And like Jesse, you know, there were certain people we paid more just because of their talent level, but from a gratuity standpoint, everything was divided equally. We didn't add a service charge. It was just based on voluntary tips that people left. And even with takeout, we were seeing people be incredibly generous in ways that they never were with takeout in the past.
So it's very similar, Anne. And if we go back to table service, we would do voluntary tipping again. The problem with to go is people think, oh, when it's to go, we shouldn't tip. And I want to say, yes, but these people are still working. If
Right.
in fact they're working harder, they've got masks on, we've got to pay them too. So we decided that we would add the service charge. We were scared to death of it. We've gotten a couple complaints, but not too many. But that's why we did the service charge. As it went down for to go, they thought, oh, it's to go.
Yeah.
Michael, what about you?
Well, this is actually something that I know that Jesse and I have been working together for, like, I don't even know, 5 years plus on the local level. And most guests don't realize this. And, you know, people don't, I don't want to say they don't care, because people care, but they want to see the tip of the iceberg. They don't want to see the 99% of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. This is actually one that's really critical, though, because when Palo Alto instituted their city municipal minimum wage, our labor costs have gone from, which were super, from 25%, where we were, you know, superstar restaurant operators, to you know, 40 plus, and we're out of business. So, you know, the pandemic really has forced this issue to be addressed immediately. So most people don't recognize that until last year, I think, when the law was changed, it was illegal to share tips with the kitchen staff, with anybody that wasn't involved directly in service. That was a federal law that prohibited business owners from doing that. A lot of people did it anyway, risking, you know, and have been sued by employees for doing so. I'm all about fair wages. I want our people to be taken care of, because if they're not taken care of, they're not going to be healthy, and they're not going to be great employees. You know, it's a relationship that needs to work for everyone involved. We switched our model. We still allow the guests to decide want to leave as a gratuity, but we've shifted our tip out to, as Jesse said, be a little bit more fairly distributed. And the pandemic accelerated what was happening. You know, we're still, I'd say, thinking about changing that in the future, because the reality is that, again, you know, that we have the highest minimum wage in the country. We also live in the most expensive area in the country, but most other states aren't on the same playing field as us. They have a tip credit or a total compensation wage that allows them to pay their tipped employees sometimes a little, but sometimes a lot less an hour, which survived our business models in the past. But recognizing California is not going backward on that, we need to adapt. And I think, you know, what Jesse's describing and what Anne's describing is what is generally happening across the board. You know, my sense would be, instead of, you know, taking a pie and making smaller slices, let's make a bigger pie. So how do we do that? We need to figure out, you know, through this, you know, these new business developments, how we make that happen. You know, so for us, we were in the same boat as Anne and Jessica. We never did takeout. You know, we might do, you know, before March 15th, we might do 1 or 2 orders a night. It just wasn't our thing. We were too busy to even no offense to pick up the phone and take an order, but that wasn't our bit. But 2 days later, if we didn't do that, we would be out of business. So that all goes back to living through that period from, March 17th, until we could reopen outdoor dining. We had 4 staff members figuring out how to make it work. So when we did bring service staff back, we brought them back, essentially with a new contract. Like, hey guys, we might have done stuff like this, back, way back when, early 2020. But today we're starting a new program. And I think for the most part, it's been successful. I mean, we've definitely had some grumblings from staff that, used to make, as Jesse said, $50, $60, $70 plus an hour just in tips. These guys didn't even know, they don't know if they know today, but if we asked them in March what minimum wage was, they had no idea. Now they do. And that is, kind of the crux of the problem and what really has forced us to, come up with these other ideas. And I think that in the end, it is more equitable, but we have to educate our staff. We have to educate the service staff, especially that's used to, no offense to them, but maybe doing a little bit less work and making more money, and then our back of the house folks, heart of the house, and Jesse's nomenclature, our dishwasher, our prep cook, those are the hardest working people in our restaurants, our line cooks. They're back there 8 hours a day, however hot the kitchen is, and they're cranking it out. So
Michael,
I like the developments.
I think the important thing for people listening and something for the general public to share is that this acknowledgement that this is a hard business, and what you mentioned, when they get their beautiful plate of delicious food on a clean plate and walk into a clean bathroom or sit down with a clean cloth or anything that is taken care of, organized, it is not just one person. And it's not saying one is more important than the other. And I'm so glad you've done this. We did a pooled house too, but this is going a little further. I think it is hoping that when our guests are generous with us and they leave something on the table, that they know it is touching every single person who had something to do with their meal.
Right.
We got a question from someone, they don't have a name. It sounds like they're a restaurant owner who's doing something like heart of house and said, we are doing it, but we get a lot of backlash. How is your messaging different?
Personally, I'm pretty strong, and I just look at them and say, this is a very challenging time. We want to stay open. Please support us. And so we don't get too much pushback. But I have no problem saying to them, then it's okay if you want to eat somewhere else, because I'm going to take care of my staff. Mm-hmm. Talk to them, let them know it's not, you're not just keeping it and buying a Mercedes, you are giving it to the people who are working to give them their meal, whether it's fast food or whatever it is, it's going to the people who are still working and they're not.
Mm-hmm. I do hope people are tipping, even if they're getting takeout, and tipping
generously.
Yeah. There's another question. Out of necessity comes innovation. Where have you been either successful or unsuccessful with new paradigms or solutions?
I can speak to this one. Back in late March, I worked with the Redwood City Chamber of Commerce, and we put together a Feeding Heroes program, where we worked with the Chamber of Commerce to generate donations from area businesses, and we all independently and individually fundraised as well, where we were able to get donations so that would sponsor our participating restaurants in preparing meals for hospitals and other frontline workers. And that was incredibly successful for the month that it lasted. And it really definitely helped carry us through the earlier period when we were all trying to figure out, will takeout only work? Will we do enough business to carry us through this period? And it definitely augmented our revenue during that time.
So Anne, we did the same thing. We have mealsofgratitude.org, and we are still functioning. We're still doing anywhere from 500 to about 700 meals a week. Right
Wow.
now, we're sending them to evacuees. I drive them to the hotels where they're staying, and we send 100 meals a day to the Stanford labs, the people who are processing all the tests. And so I personally feel incredibly grateful for Meals of Gratitude because it has kept 7 of my people employed. And it's a pure nonprofit, but it is, I think for many of us, it saved us.
Wow. Another question, what's the most beneficial thing we as consumers can do to help restaurants survive?
At least call the restaurants directly and order takeout. You know, Laura and I try, as busy as we are walking in circles in our own restaurant, we try and I would say dine out, but at least order, takeaway 3 times a week. So, whether Flea Street, which is right around the corner from our house, go there. I've already, let's see, what did I do this week? I went to Celia's in Palo Alto this week, and we're going to 2 or 3 restaurants a week. And I think that's really helpful. I mean, the community, as probably all 3 of us would tell you, we have survived on their support. I think a lot of people are just eating, dining out, takeaway to support businesses because we're part of the fabric of the community, and they want to make sure that whenever the heck this all ends, that we're still there, and the sad reality is that probably maybe a majority or a little bit less won't, or already gone, and that's what we're not recognizing. But the more that people help, it helps us keep people employed, and it supports the local economy. So I think it's incredibly important.
So I would go back on tipping and service charge. As much as you want to donate to nonprofits or people struggling, our workforce are primarily immigrants. They are, if someone makes $20 an hour, that's $40,000 a year. Think about that. That's our workforce used to be paid from $19 to $33 an hour, if we can even pay that much, or $35 an hour. Everything you give in addition helps to help these people rise, and it all goes directly. So I would say when you're tipping or giving service charge, no, it's going directly to them, and that you are actually helping some of the people in our community who needs it the most to feed their family, to pay their rent, and to live well. Feel good about yourself for doing that.
Mm-hmm.
I think what Michael said are obviously very important. And what I would add to that is I would encourage everyone to go to saverestaurants.com. There's a huge campaign that they're doing to help get legislation passed that's industry specific for restaurants. And the more people they have supporting and encouraging that, they give you instructions and email templates to send to your congressmen and women and senators to really lend your support to this effort, because without some sort of governmental help in the coming months, I think we're going to see a big change in the restaurant landscape.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, I think that's a really important point that Ann just brought up is, going back to one of my original comments, the restaurant food service industry is the #1 employer in California. And it's the industry that's been hit the hardest with unemployment, with loss of revenues. I would say across the board, we're probably, down 40 to 70, 80%. And that means it's 40 to 70% less sales tax that the state has, to provide services, provide police, to provide fire, to provide schools. So it's important that we keep this industry alive just from that perspective. But it's interesting, I was reading an article, I can't remember who sent it to me, I think it was yesterday or the day before, about a program in UK where they were calling, it was something, like dine out, something or other, but the government basically was sponsoring, 50% of the cost of your meal to dine out on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday in the month of August. So I'm not suggesting that that's a great idea for the government to buy everybody's meals 3 days a week, But it was an interesting, program, we have in the hospitality sector, but also business, the PPP loans. But this is something actually that would directly affect, as Ann was saying, the hospitality and restaurant industry specifically.
Yeah. Yeah, the Federal Restaurants Act would create, it's $120 billion revitalization fund for independent restaurants, and that's what the saverestaurants.com, what the group is advocating for.
Right.
Are there all kinds of government relief or changes or support you'd want to see from local governments, from your local cities in the coming months?
I'll jump in real quick after Ann speaks.
I think, for the most part, many cities I've found are doing the best that they can, and look at they're trying to figure this out, the best way to help us as we're trying to figure out the best way to stay alive. Jesse and Michael know, with Palo Alto closing streets, Redwood City closed streets in downtown as well, in an effort to support restaurants. And so it is being done. How much more at a local level they can do, I don't know, because I don't think they have the budgets to do what we would need them to do. It really comes down to, the federal government, I think, lending a helping hand to ensure that restaurants survive.
And finding a way, if we really, when the weather gets, somebody said to me the other day that when the weather, turns, it's like looking down the barrel of the gun, because now being able to be outside and at least have some kind of revenue flow, that when the weather changes, it could make it very difficult. So I think if there was a way they could help us retrofit or do something so we could actually have diners inside, that might make a difference. But it's not just up us. I mean, think of the small businesses next door to the restaurants. They're really struggling because they don't have the street traffic anymore. I mean, all of us are trying to figure out how to do this. And I can only be hopeful to think that as anything else, when it gets really difficult and hard, that we are going to figure out ways to come alive again. And the young are going to help us reinvent the way we look at feeding people, or now that we're paying them better, the industry might be more attractive rather than a place of dysfunction. And so I'm really hopeful that some of this, when this is at a different place, will not only get support from the public who understand that now that this is a hard business, and the government who is hearing our voice. Michael, they weren't even hearing us for a while there. And that the public really embraces all small businesses being a very big part of their community.
Yeah.
Because we'll go away.
I know there's so many, there's been at least 2 instances where a restaurant closed in the last few weeks, and it was like they were on my list to order from and I just hadn't gotten around to it. And it's so sad when that happens, and it makes you realize, like, if there's somewhere you want to eat from, just order from them and tip well. We have someone who's going to ask a live question. I'm going to let him talk. Go ahead, Zach.
Hey, thanks so much. This is a bit of a 2-part question. So Elena, earlier you talked about adapting business models. Jesse, you mentioned what it felt like to have to compromise on your vision of not putting your food in takeout containers, and also a little bit about your new menu offerings to try to stay competitive. I was hoping you could all talk about how you balance your creative vision as chefs and owners with the realities of having to adapt your menus for a new economic model, and more specifically for Ann and Michael, your restaurant's identities are a little more cemented than that of Flea Street's, I think, because of the ethnic identities of Vietnamese and Cuban cuisine. So how much wiggle room do you feel like you have before your repeat customers sense that they aren't getting the familiar experience that made them fall in love with your restaurants in the first place?
I think that's what we're doing. We are doing our best to make them still be in love with us and feel our personalities, even though we can't be near them. We miss people, but every box we pack, every way we put the food together, the way we, recreate, the way we have new menu items, what we have to offer, we are constantly reinventing so that our guests can feel our personalities and our passion.
And speaking of personalities, one of the things we miss the most about being able to take care of our guests in person was that human connection, and what we were doing that was really well received, and we loved seeing it posted on Yelp quite frequently, was that we were putting personalized notes in each takeout package, and they were handwritten notes that were personalized to the person making that order, you know, expressing our appreciation and gratitude for their support during this time. You know, that was not something that we had ever planned on doing, but you know, we were in we were in a moment where we realized, you know, if it weren't for this person right now making this order, we wouldn't be here. And so we added that element, and it was really nice to see how much it was appreciated.
And we did some of the same. We call every single guest back, even though they've made their order online, and confirm their reservation and thank them. I write thank you notes because the new platforms, everybody's on an email. So I just write these little thank you notes, and we put notes in them. And then we actually ask them to take pictures of their food and send it to us so we can show our staff. And on our Instagram, we say, join us for behind the scenes so we can let you see what's going on in our kitchen to create that humanness that Ann said so well. I mean, it was a part of why you went out. You got to be near us. But back to HOH, one good awareness is more people are going to realize there's more than just the front of the house. There are a lot of people involved in preparing that meal for them.
Well, you know, for us, when we shut down for 2 days trying to figure out what the heck was next, our kitchen staff is who we brought back, because without them, we're nowhere. So the challenge is now, as you know, everyone is acknowledging, it's tough to go from hospitality mentality of, you know, welcoming guests into your home essentially 5 or 7 days a week, and ensuring that they have a great experience. That they, you know, obviously the food is critical, but there's so much more that goes into it when you go out to a restaurant. And it's important that you have a connection, that you enjoy the ambiance, drinks are great, everything is well thought out. I mean, it's so much more than just food. Obviously, if you don't have great food, you're probably not going to make it. But how do you kind of transmit that when you're putting a box in a bag and someone's picking it up? And I think that that's important, is to be, you know, thoughtful about what you're doing. We, you know, try and be as creative as possible, although given the, let's say, constraints of sales, it's a little bit challenging. But, you know, it's funny because I went out, I think it was Sunday or Monday or whatever day it was this week or last week, and I went out to Redwood City, and I caught up to that fellow that sells fish out of the truck.
Yeah,
I thought, oh, this is kind of a cool idea. You know, so I went over, bought some halibut, had some, you know, some chowder and, you know, some tacos, brought the halibut back to work, made some soup, made some fillets. And I thought, this is brilliant. Now, I wish that we could do more of that, but, you know, we're kind of running on fumes right now, and it's challenging, you know, to get up and be 100% positive like we are every day, kind of given the, let's say, headwinds.
Yeah. I mean, as a diner, I appreciate that I got takeout last week, and there was a little handwritten note and a drawing of a little animal wearing a mask, and it just said, thank you for your support. And it was just, I appreciate that. And I remember actually my parents ordered takeout from Nam a few months ago, and there was a tangerine in the order, and they sent me a picture of that, and they love that. And so I think like that also, it really does translate to the diners, even if you're at home and you're eating out of a cardboard box, like that still makes an impact.
I think those little extra touches are what connect us to them.
Yeah. Someone else asked about your supply chains and how that's been affected, and if ingredients are more expensive now.
It's a struggle. Buy local. If there's ever time, please go to the markets and ask what is being grown locally. But most of the vendors and the fishermen and the ranchers and the farmers are actually doing pretty well, because people are more respectful of wanting to know where their food comes from. So I'm not having trouble getting food because we've always been local. But the prices should go up. I think that's another thing we could talk about, is those of us that have, as food gets more expensive, we need to pay for it and not make it elitist, but if we do have the money, then give to the food banks, give to people who don't have. But to just say that we want, you know, inexpensive, big food, rather than not support our local people is also going to mean that those farmers will go away. So those who have, take care of those who don't have.
We have someone who wants to ask a question live, so I'm gonna let them speak. Go ahead, Jason. Jason, can you hear us? No? Okay, we'll try to go back to him. Well, I don't want to also let the hour go by without talking about food. Is there something, maybe one thing each of you has cooked or takeout you've gotten in the last week or so that you were really excited about or that you just enjoyed? Michael talked about the fish.
I made some great halibut 3 days in a row. It was delicious. And I thought, you know what? Thank you. Whoever put that bug in my ear, I appreciate it. But that goes back to what Jesse was just mentioning is how important it is to support, you know, local farmers, local producers, whatever they are. It doesn't matter what they're doing, you know, whether, you know, we've been buying some honey from some local people making cocktails. We've been, you know, buying local produce. And I think I really wish that, I mean, it's, you know, I don't mind going to the farmer's market. I love going to the farmer's market as long as I don't have to get up too early. But I would love to have a local vendor that brought awesome produce and awesome meat and awesome fish to my restaurant so that I didn't have to do that on my one day off. And I think that out of this, it would actually be interesting, or maybe there's someone out there that I don't know about that actually provided that service to us, because prices are up. But if I'm paying a higher price, you know, we're expecting a higher quality. And one of the interesting things I think that happened during the beginning, which we all understood, was that wasn't happening. We weren't getting great quality for the prices that we were paying. I would say in the course of 2 to 3 weeks, I returned more to my vendors in 2 to 3 weeks than I've returned in however long we've been open, 20 something years. It was just, I mean, I couldn't believe it. I thought, listen, we're having a hard time. I know you guys are having a hard time, but don't show up with mint that's not beautiful for my mojitos, which, you know, is my signature drink. Come on. But I think that was a tough time that people were having. And hopefully it's resolved, but prices are much higher, you know, and I think it's whether it's labor, whether it's the food that goes into our dishes, or whether it's our fixed costs. And, you know, everybody in the table here is probably in the same boat. You know, we're paying, you know, $1,000 plus a day to, you know, rent a business that we can't use. And so how do we deal with that? Anyway, my halibut was delicious.
Well, on the seafood note, I buy my seafood from a fishmonger named Fishmonger Don, so I'm gonna give him a plug. But he sources mostly local. He will tell you which vessel it came off of and how it was caught, net, line, however. He gets some really great quality fish, and it's really nice to be able to treat yourself to some fresh local seafood. He gets spot prawns from the Farallon Islands. He gets all sorts of wonderful things. And he delivers to the Bay Area. And so you can go to his website and see what he has fresh and local this week and place your order.
Nice.
And I buy from 2xC. I buy from Marin Sun. All of our meat, chicken, poultry is pastured from Marin Sun. So I think keeping those people alive, because they are growing our local food, is equally as important. Michael, I'll share some names with you. They'll bring it to the door.
Love it. Thank you.
Jesse, is there anything you've eaten recently that you were excited about?
Well, believe it or not, as much as I love going out, I'm just been happy because I'm cooking at home for like the first time in 40 years, more than ever. And I'm so happy in my garden, making my own pasta. And it's been a real pleasure for me to get to know myself in my own kitchen again. But you know, I had a great meal at Michael's. I had a wonderful treat for myself, a protege. And you know, I love some of the taco places because I don't want them to go away, the little mom and pop places, and to get a nice Indian wrap. And I love Delfina, you know, I love their smoked eggplant right now and a tricolor salad. So for me, I've loved making homemade pasta and getting whatever I have in my garden and just putting it on it.
You should do a pasta class online.
I actually did a little one. It was the goofiest thing you ever seen. Me trying to film myself is kind of sad. It was like, hi, I'm here. We've been doing, we have actually an Instagram page where they're putting these videos up, and sometimes it's half my head and it's just ridiculous. But
someone asked, does it feel like orders from to go have gone down with people getting fatigue from supporting restaurants as COVID lingers? And do you have ideas for how to pivot that and make it more interesting for customers to come back?
I think that's up to us to stay creative and keep it going on our websites and menus. I mean, it's like any other business. We're all getting used to the new reality, which is like much smaller, and we're all terrified when it goes away. And I think a lot of people are dining out right now. So that's making a huge difference on to go. Michael, you mentioned that today in a conversation.
Yeah, I think I mean, if we didn't have what I would say awesome community support for takeout, we wouldn't be here today. There's no doubt about it. I would say that I've noticed that for us, we've seen our takeout sales decline as we were able to open out of doors. So it kind of ties in with what Ann was saying earlier, is that once people could venture back out and knew that they could eat outside safely, then they weren't ordering as much. So we are kind of at an equilibrium with that, where as long as we have our outdoor dining, for as long as that lasts, we're going to be okay. I think if something shifted, hopefully people would get back on board and be ordering more takeout from us. But I think that's important. I mean, we are trying to do, I mean, we have our core menu that we've had for 20 plus years, and some items haven't changed. And when we try and change them, we get death threats. But the reality is that we're doing something, we're probably doing 5 different things every week. And, just kind of, testing it out, see if it works. And, kind of being a little bit creative. But it is incredibly challenging when we're used to, serving on a busy day, 500 people. And now we're serving less than 100. So it's, we're just scaling things back, but we're still trying to keep engaged and keep creative. And, I think that's one of the things that I'm not a social media person. I didn't even know that we had a website at La Bodeguita.
You got on
the reality
Instagram
is,
the first time.
I think that that's really important right now. I think that people are, that's how they're communicating. I'm a middle-aged guy and an old man, or I'm an old man in a middle-aged man's body. So I don't do any of that. Luckily, my wife is somewhat engaged in making things happen there. And I think that that's really, kind of the secret of being semi-successful right now. I call being open successful for us. So that's how I characterize it. I think it's really important.
And we have actually amped up. I was like you, Michael, like Instagram. I didn't even know what the handle was. And we had someone help us. And so we're telling our stories that we used to tell at the table. And
Right.
I think a lot through Instagram and Facebook. And I think a lot of people, especially when winter comes and they're a little nervous about the real safety of dining out, I think more people will be choosing to get to go again. So I would say get ready for that, and please support us during the winter. While you're cooking, we want you to cook at home because it's a wonderful trend that everybody's growing gardens and cooking at home. But also, I think for all of us as restaurateurs to keep our to-go vibrant, alive, moving, and we'll just keep that wife of yours wigging out on Wednesday.
That's every day. She only posts on Wednesday.
Anyway.
I'm gonna give Jason one more try to see if he can ask his question. Go ahead, Jason.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
All right. Device shift. So having the three of you on one screen, all I'm missing is the Village Pub, and then I've got the four favorite restaurants of mine here on the peninsula. I live in Menlo Park, and my wife and I are frequently out and about in your restaurants, and it's that sense of human connection and community and the storytelling. And as Michael touched on, the food obviously needs to be solid, but it's everything else that brings us out of our house, where everybody is now stuck in their house. To me, anecdotally, feels there's a lot of pent up energy to want to get back into your restaurants. I've always felt the peninsula had a massive shortage of outdoor dining, given our fantastic weather. So maybe this is a silver lining, if we can keep the outdoor dining more of a permanent fixture. Are you guys thinking, is there ever going to be a point where we're going to come back and sit at your tables and be able to talk to you, learn about the food, learn about where it came from, experience the quality? Because to order from you and have it delivered to my house, it's not the same. And the quality control is not the same. And I just hope that there's a vision that you guys are, as artists, can create within this constricting environment where we can all come back and your people are happy, you're happy, it's economically viable, and it's closer to normal than it used to be. Or is that wishful thinking? I'm an idealist from the heart, but.
Well, I think we're all hanging on for that day and hoping that that day will come again. So thank you for hanging on with us.
And I think it will mean a vaccine, because unfortunately for us to have any inside dining, Jason, that means the tables have to be so far apart, and a restaurant like Flea St, the 4 small rooms, that would mean maybe 2 tables in each room. And economically, that's impossible. I think it would feel weird too. But so I think we have to rely on, we're going to open in the spring for outdoor dining, but outdoor dining, more safety measures, more support, and a vaccine. Would you guys agree that we know that we're safe, that our staff is safe?
I think that's exactly correct. We, as business owners, this was pre-pandemic. I mean, we are operating, making sure that food safety and health are paramount to us. That's number one in our minds every day. So how do we deal with that right now? I think the challenge is that with being, let's say, non-political, there's been a failure on every level of, and I hope I don't offend too many people, but, local, state, federal, what the heck's going on? Why does it take somebody 3 days to get a test result? Where's the organization? What's happening here? I mean, in our businesses, we didn't have a pandemic plan, but we're also not elected government officials that's your life to plan on that. And I think that's really tragic right now, because we're seeing, people suffer, people lose their lives, people lose their livelihoods because we are basically unprepared. And I totally agree. We had an architect come out. We knew that said, hey, I'll do it for no charge because I know they don't have any money. And, we can have 32 seats in our restaurant. And we have almost 4,000 square feet. But the way that our restaurant is built and, the social distancing requirements, it's not economically feasible. And, I agree with Jesse that people don't want to go into an empty dining room. They don't want, it's just not part of the restaurant vibe. If I want an empty dining room, I'm going to stay home and wear my pajamas. But, the challenge is that's not hospitality. That's not what we do. And how do we evolve from that? So I think that's it. I mean, if there's a vaccine, I think a lot of people, most will be more comfortable with going out. But, again, we see people We call them, not us, I've heard this, they're called mask holes. And that's a person that refuses to wear a mask, then they act like a jerk face. So I didn't coin that name, but there are a lot of those people out and about. And I wonder, where the heck they come from, but they prevent us from actually being successful, from conveying to other guests, hey, we care about you. But when you have somebody show up that is belligerent and refuses to wear their mask, that's very challenging. So I think that kind of spoils it for everybody else.
And I think to get back into in-house dining, I think that one of the biggest challenges is not just getting the vaccine, but how long will it take for everyone who needs to be vaccinated to get vaccinated, and how long after they get vaccinated are they going to wait before they feel comfortable dining inside a restaurant again? And these are all unknowns. And so, like Michael said earlier, we're trying to plan ahead, but it's hard to plan when we don't know how people are going to react and what it's going to take for people to feel comfortable again.
Yeah. Well, there are so many unknowns, but I hope you all know that, for me personally, food is something that's brought me so much comfort, even if it's just takeout and picking it up and seeing someone's eyes behind their mask when I pick it up, the staff member. So I really encourage people, you've heard that over and over in the last hour, to keep ordering takeout, especially when it's winter, when things start getting cold again and people aren't dining out. And I want to be respectful of everyone's time too. Is there anything else any of you want to say? Any parting words?
Elena, thank you so much for sharing our stories with the public. You're so fair and good and kind, and have always made sure that you express us to our guests. It means a lot.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Well, thank you all so much. I really appreciate you being here. I hope we can do this again. And thanks to everyone for watching.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, Elena, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think it's great that people actually get a little peek behind the curtains and see, how exciting and enriching restaurant life is. So we appreciate the opportunity. And also, I thank every person that's supported us. So thank you.
Definitely. And I think that, it's one thing to read articles about, particular topics, but to actually hear from, somebody who's owning and operating a restaurant firsthand and be able to hear their voice as they speak and have them express, more than just a couple of sentences, what's going on for them, I think is really valuable for people who are not in the business to learn about. So thank you for doing this and giving us the opportunity to share our stories.
Yeah, of course. I totally agree.
And for everyone to be hopeful for us. We are not giving up.
Yes, that definitely came through. Thank you all so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye-bye.